make sure you have a head.
Bruh.
Hello ladies and gentlemen, my name is Kids Coding and welcome back to another video. What you just saw in the beginning was my last CSS video I did in 5th grade. Why did I bring that up? Well, it's time to go down memory lane. There are a lot of stuff I have not yet to complete on my channel, so I thought we would go back to them. Welcome to a video on CSS selections. There are 5 CSS selectors. There are 5 types of selectors: simple, combinator, pseudo class, pseudo elements, and attribute. This video is about the simple selectors, so let's get rolling. The first type are the element selectors. This will just simply select elements based on the element name. So let's say we start out with the style. CSS elements, or like CSS, always includes the style. So it will always include it. And just remember that we always include style in CSS. So let's press enter and then add P, and then let's do that. And then let's add a text align, and then let's add center. Then let's press enter and then add the color. So what we're doing is that what CSS do we want to apply to the HTML? So now we're creating the CSS. Later in the code we will add the HTML. And whenever we include the paragraph tag, then the CSS will be inputted into the HTML. If there is no paragraph tag by the code, then the CSS will not show up. So we finished. After that, let's end the CSS. And then let's move on to making the HTML. So I'm going to do this, and I'm going to do that. As simple as that. And then finally, let's end the body. Let's save it. And as you see here, whenever it showed the paragraph tag, then it would center it, so the text would be centered and the color would be red. So that's what we wanted it to do. If we go back to the code one more time, oh, it's right here. Then here it says P. This P is very valuable in any CSS. This right here is very valuable because that shows what the CSS is going to go into the HTML. Since we said P, anything with the paragraph tag would be applied to the CSS, would be applied to the HTML. Just before I get any further into the video, it is time to recap. Remember that CSS stands for Cascading Style Sheets, and we use it to add decoration to any HTML web page. It is important to understand HTML before CSS. So if you haven't already, click on the HTML playlist on the top right hand corner. So be sure to understand HTML before CSS. Have a basic understanding of HTML because they are both tied together and sort of work together like a team. Anyways, back to the video. Guys, so we're back and let's get going. So first I'm going to be talking about the ID selectors. So with ID selectors, we can just add the CSS into the HTML by stating a code. It selects one unique element, or it's like a unique element, I'd say. It is a unique element. It doesn't select. But the code name is up to you, but it has to start with the hashtag no exceptions. So what I'm going to demonstrate for this tutorial is that I'm going to do para 1. So always starting off with the style. And then after that, I'm going to say para 1. Where's the hashtag? Okay. And then I'm going to do that. And then I'm going to say text. I'm going to align it to the center. And then I'm going to make the text color red. And then end it there. And then we're done with the CSS. time to do the HTML. Equals para1, and let's say this, and then let's say P, and let's say that. And then let's save it, or that. Now let's save it, and then let me go here. And as you see, what has happened is that we selected the specific ID. So the ID or the code was para1. So I showed that here. So I made it equal to the first paragraph element. If I say tag and element a lot, they both mean the same thing. Tag and element are interchangeable and they mean the same thing. So if I put it in the paragraph tag, and I said I made the CSS equal to paragraph 1. So whenever I would say paragraph 1 in the HTML, then the CSS would be applied into the HTML. So here is where the CSS was actually applied, because I made the code into the HTML. I made it into the first paragraph element. Here I did not add the ID, so it didn't really do anything, and it just kept it like a regular HTML text like you see right here. So that's it with an ID. It's just like a special code name that you can put into the HTML for it to work. So next is the class selector. So this really just selects the HTML elements with a specific class attribute. We can do this by doing a dot, then the class name like center. So I'm gonna make the color red and I'm gonna center it. So let's say dot center, and then let's do that. Say text, line, make it center. And then after that, let's make the color red. And then let's end the style. And then let's say here we'll do h1 class, and then let's set it equal to center. So let's make the class center, and then let's make it this, and then we'll do the same thing here. And then finally gotta end it. Let's save it and let's reload. So as you see, what happens is that we added the center. So we added the center inside both of the HTML codes, meaning that the CSS will apply to both. But one is bigger than the other because I applied a heading 1. A heading 1 is like, it's just a heading, it's the biggest heading, and it's what makes the font size a little bit bigger than the paragraph. But if I were to delete this and I would just make it a regular HTML code, then as you reload it, then only this it would be applied, because I pretty much am requesting the CSS to equal center. By the way, this is all the CSS with style inside. So I'm making that all equal dot center. So whenever I would say center in the HTML, which is right here past the body, then the CSS would be applied into HTML. Here it's not applied into the HTML, so nothing will happen, and it will just be a regular HTML text. Whoa there, I gotta slow down. Okay, so we then got something a little bit different that I can say. So if I did something like that, and then I did that, and then I said, and then let's make it center, like that. Does that look good? and then let's make it this. So you'll see what ends up happening. And that's what happens. Because I did say center, but it didn't really apply in this scenario, I guess you could say. Yeah, it doesn't apply in this scenario because we only want it to center like the code says. Whenever we say p center, so like I said before, this is very important because it tells the CSS when the CSS will be applied into the HTML. In this case, it will only be applied when we put the paragraph element. So since we only put the paragraph element here, then the CSS will be applied. It will not be applied to the heading 1 because we did not put heading 1 over here. I hope that makes sense. So let's move on, and we can apply a specific element for more than one class. So I'll just apply the paragraph tag to the center in large class. So let's say I had something like this. And then let's say I had yeah, and then I said font size 300%. That seems good. And then let's finish that, and then let's end it with a style. God, I gotta start getting used to this. Body. And then let's say we got 3 different types for the HTML. Let's make a center. And then we got and then let's end it with, let's say that's an H2. Right. Yeah, no, let's make it a P. Okay, there. That looks good. And then lastly, let's do it one more time. And you'll see my point in doing 3 tags for my HTML. Like I said, we use HTML in CSS. They are involved together. They work together like a team. That's the best way I think about it. They work together like a team. Save it and reload. So what happens is that the first one, which is a heading 1, it may look big, but that's only because it's a heading 1 and it's supposed to look big. But nothing happened to it because as you see, it said p.center, meaning that the CSS will only apply when there's a paragraph tag or a paragraph element. So since there wasn't a paragraph element, then it won't be centered. For the other 2, there was a paragraph, but one had only a center and the other one had center large. So let's go back, and we had both center and large. Since the last one had center large, both of the CSS got applied to it. CSS's plural. Anyway, so these are each individuals by itself. They're not together. They're individual, but we do put them in the style tag. So since we only said center, it only that applied. But if we said center large, then both would apply, and then if we said large, then only the large would apply. Okay, and then we got the universal selector. So what the universal selector does is that it pretty much, no matter what it is, anything, the change will happen. The CSS will always be applied to the HTML. That's why it's called the universal selector, and it's represented by a simple asterisk. So let me just quickly change colors. Let's make it blue. And then let's get rid of all this. And then let's say that, and then this, that, and then it. That looks good. Let me reload. So as you see, what happened is that we didn't have to put anything in the code because the universal selector already solves that problem. So the CSS told that we wanted to center it and make it blue. So we wouldn't have to do anything because the universal selector makes all of the HTML happen. No matter how much you put, quantity, quality, whatever, it's still going to do it because it is the universal selector. The CSS applies to all tags because we added the universal selector. So lastly, we have something called the grouping selector. So we wouldn't want to do something like this. So like honestly, like even if you're like a good coder, you wouldn't want to like have to repeat the same thing forever and ever. Like you wouldn't want to have to do this and then make it that and then you red and then again do the same thing for the heading 1. You probably would not want to do that. It's just a waste of time. And we can just simply solve that problem. And it's not that difficult. All we can just do is group them together. So we can make P, H1, and H2 all become the same thing. And then after that, we can just do end the style, and then you see here, body, H1, and then H2, and then paragraph. So as you see, what ends up happening is that it's just a shorter way to do everything because it just groups everything with the CSS so that we just don't have to rewrite it each time. And the same thing happens, but the font size just decreases because we put heading 1, heading 2, and paragraph. So that just pretty much concludes Simple Selectors. So be sure to subscribe if you're new so you can help me get to 100 subscribers. And anyways, I will see you guys next time.